Today we celebrate some of Australia's most influential contributions to the music industry.
Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. I've provided security and transportation for some of the biggest names in the music industry.
I'm John. I've been a musician for over 20 years, playing everything from metal and punk to bluegrass and country.
We're bringing you a podcast about some of the weirdest myths and legends that the music industry has to offer. This is Tall Tales and Music Mythology.
Hey friends, this is Mary from the Mary Movement Podcast. We tell true stories that will inspire, encourage, and warm your heart. So join the movement at themarymovement.com.
Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to listen to us. And with me is my partner on the ones and twos, Mr. Jonathan Glove.
Hello, everybody.
So today we got a little bit of a different show. I'll explain it in a little bit, but first I wanted to get with the Smarts update and the music news. On the Smarts update, we're going through the 501c3 process right now. And we've had times in the past where we started it and then for whatever reason we had to stop it. But we have retained a really good attorney that I've worked with in the past before, and this is what they do. They're just business lawyers, and this is just like what they do. So we're getting that started. That should be a few months in the making right there. Sometime probably Thursday. That's probably going to be the 4th or the 5th, something like that. I should be meeting with a local producer that he has multiple gold and platinum records under his belt, and that really excited to meet him. He's got a lot of contacts, but the thing I like best is he's got a lot of knowledge, and I think he's got a lot of studio too. Judging from what I've heard, he's got a lot of studio. So we're also looking at an office with a studio in it. And last night I met with some great folks that they have a program to help kids learn about music on the studio level. So not just learning how to sing or play an instrument or record or whatever, but they want to teach everything. So I was really impressed with them, and I had a meeting with them last night up until probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So needless to say that my old ass was just broke tired whenever I got in last night. So you had some music news, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if you had anything, too.
Oh, yeah, I do, but go ahead with yours.
Oh, you sure? Okay. Well, so one article I saw this week that was kind of funny, frequent butt of my jokes, Lars Ulrich, discussed his unique, I guess that's one way of putting it, drumming style with blabbermouth this week, saying, quote, "I've never been very interested in ability. Don't worry, Lars, we could all tell." Just like Paul McCartney joked that Ringo wasn't the best drummer in the Beatles, Lars probably isn't the best drummer in Metallica. James Hetfield used to regularly do drum battles with him on stage in the 80s. There might be a slight exaggeration to say that James is better, but James is a solid drummer and Lars really isn't that great. But seriously, after reading the article, I kind of feel a little like a dick for making fun of him so much now. Because he basically admits that he realizes he's not as good a drummer as other metal drummers, which is a point I've joked about numerous times in the past. He says it used to bother him, but it hasn't really gotten to him for the last 15 years or so. And I have to say, his playing on their most recent album, came out in 2016, Hardwired, is undoubtedly his best performance since the 80s. So granted, I still hate the way he handled the whole Napster thing since it came off as a greedy douche. And the behind-the-scenes movie, Some Kind of Monster, didn't really help his image with that much either. But, I mean, kudos for him for saying, that he recognizes he isn't the most skilled drummer. That, again, kind of makes me feel a little bad for picking on him. But I just thought that was interesting. It was kind of a very honest piece there. It was cool to see
Yeah. It's kind of nice to be a little self-aware sometimes, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I got a couple little things. One of them that it might not mean anything to younger folks, but Vic Damone passed away at 89 years old.
I saw that.
He was the face and the attitude that was really embodied by the Rat Pack in post World War II America, and he had a voice, in my opinion, like warm butter. I mean, there's, you know, I couldn't imagine being a woman being around this guy while he's singing, you know. But anyway, he was a big influence on me whenever I was Italian, and had some pretty big hits like When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and Moon River was probably the biggest one. And then Maria, which was a huge hit in Italian circles. You know, I mean, a vast majority of what he did was really big in Italian circles. But those were the three big the big ones that most people recognize. But
Smoke Gets in Your Eyes was the name of the first episode of the TV show Mad Men as well.
No, was that right?
So
I didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
On another note, Toto has been making music for 40 years now, so it's fitting that the pop rock band titled their new collection of greatest hits going back to 1978 after their time spent making hits. So to celebrate the musical journey and encapsulate the platinum selling discography, Toto plans to release 40 Trips Around the Sun this month. That's the name of their 17-track album, and they're going to have 3 unreleased tracks. And I am really excited to hear about that. So, in a related note,
we're so crazy talented.
We're working on interviews right now with David Hungate and Steve Lukather from Toto, and that is absolutely unrelated. We were talking about this before I heard about the news, but
yeah, very true. Man,
but I
just talk to Steve Lukather. That would be freaking insane.
Oh, you could just shoot yourself in the temple right there, right?
That dude is such an unreal guitarist. It's just crazy.
You know, I'm sure we said it at one time or another, but, you know, one of the biggest songs that influenced me whenever I was in high school was I Feel For You by Shaka Khan.
Oh, yeah.
And Steve played guitar on that.
Yes, he did. And I think I actually mentioned that maybe in the episode about the Indianapolis hip-hop scene. I know we've mentioned that before at some point.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said, great thing about being old with a shitty memory is everything's brand new to you every day. Finally, in my never-ending rant about Kanye West, the American television watching public can finally rest as the perfect show has been planned for release really soon. And I don't know.
Yep.
Kanye West family plans to play against the Kardashian Jenners in Celebrity Family Feud.
I saw that this morning, man. I read that to Kristen. It's like, you are not going to believe this.
God, I can't stand that guy.
So
Kanye West and his wife
makes such great music, but he's such a crazy bastard.
Oh God, don't even get me started. Two things. I always try to be, upbeat, and I don't like the negative shit. And also, I'm not trying to get hate mail. So, if people respect him as an artist,
and what are you doing on a podcast with me?
if people respect him as an artist, I'm not, I'm not down on your taste or anything, because I think he is a very talented guy. I just think that my opinion of him and his opinion of him are two completely different animals. But,
well, like I always say, cocaine is a hell of a drug.
You so ain't right.
That definitely explains the overwhelming majority of his batshit.
Well, true that. So Kanye West, his wife Kim Kardashian West, his aunt Beverly, and two of his cousins, Jaleel Peraza and Ricky Anderson, will make up one team on the U.S. game show, with the Kardashian Jenners filling the other. So there you have it. Set your schedules and your recordings.
Man, I'm very curious to see how that turns out, because
I would just like
a lot of intelligence.
I would just like to see the man smile for once.
I've seen him smile. I mean, he's definitely crazy. There's no doubt. But man, I don't know. I don't know if I would go down that path to crazy town, but I would definitely say that my opinion of him and his opinion of him are two completely different animals. So maybe not crazy, but definitely coke fueled. We'll definitely say that.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with that. So recently I was shamelessly looking at the numbers from the podcast, and I seen that almost 13% of our listenership lives in Australia.
Hey.
I was shocked. Now, I have never had the pleasure of visiting Australia, but it's one of those places on my bucket list.
Ooh.
And I was in the Navy, and I did a lot of traveling in the Navy, as well as driving truck, tour buses, and providing security in the United States. So traveling is not something I would actually relish, but I would definitely make an exception going to Australia. Nevertheless, in appreciation for all the listeners in Australia, we've decided to do a special about the music that makes your country so damn cool. And neither of us have been there, so y'all gonna have to excuse us if we screw up a few names or places or whatever. I can assure you it's not on purpose. And the last disclaimer I want to give is this is not a definitive list.
No.
This is just the ones that we've appreciated through the years. So, don't cuss at us in Australian, even when y'all cuss, you sound cool. Holy hell. But, just take it easy on it. We're just stupid Americans, and this is just the stuff that we heard on our side of the water. So anyway, you go ahead with yours first, man.
Oh, okay. Sounds like a plan. So, Midnight Oil is the first band I've got down here. Affectionately known by their fans as the Oils. Fact I learned from my Oilhead editor at the magazine I write for. The band originally started as Farm in 1972 before changing their name in 1976 with the addition of vocalist/harmonica player Peter Garrett.
Bad dude.
Yeah. American fans probably know them best for their 1987 hit Beds Are Burning. And in fact, the song is ranked as one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and was actually voted third in the Best Australian Songs of All Time contest, I guess you'd say, during the 75th anniversary of the Australasian Performing Right Association. In spite of these facts, though, the song only reached number 6 on the Australian charts. Preceding single Dead Heart.
Wow.
I know, right? Blew me away. Preceding single Dead Heart actually placed higher at number 4 than Beds Are Burning. Yeah, kind of surprised me. Despite being largely unknown in the U.S. before release of that album, Diesel and Dust, they had released 5 other albums in Australia, which all received moderate to great success in their homeland. In fact, their previous 2 albums, 1984's Red Sails in the Sunset and 1982's 109876543221 reached numbers 1 and 3 respectively on the Australian charts, and the other 3 albums placed in the top 50, 12th, 36th, and then 43rd. They actually continued to enjoy success in Australia with their next 5 albums after Diesel and Dust as well, all of them placing in the top 10, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 7th, and 8th respectively.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. So they briefly disbanded in 2002 when singer Peter Garrett left to pursue a career in politics. Now, he had run for the Australian Senate in 1984 with the Nuclear Disarmament Party and only barely lost, which it cracks me up. I love how, we have just, by and large, really just 2 parties here in America. I mean, you got the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, do a little bit here and there, but they usually gather less than 10% of the votes total, in every election. But Australia has a nuclear disarmament party that, almost wins an election.
Nice.
And I love that so many other countries have so many different parties, and I really wish we could adopt that in America personally.
Well, as soon as we get rid of a vast majority of the corruption we have in our system, maybe we could do that.
You're not kidding. I mean, the 2 parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, just have such a stranglehold on everything involved with the elections. It's pathetic. But so Peter actually won the seat for the Kingsford Smith division in 2004, running under the Australian Labor Party banner. And apparently, I had to look this up because I had no clue about how voting works in Australia. Apparently, divisions are the Australian equivalent of congressional districts in America.
Okay.
So, Kingsford Smith division is just south of the division in which Sydney is located. So, it kind of gives you an idea of the geography there. And now next part, again, was something I had to look up as well. He was selected as the Shadow Minister for Climate Change, Environment, Heritage, and the Arts.
Right. I remember that.
Before you ask, what the fuck is a Shadow Minister, as I did, I can tell you that no, it is not the bad guy from the Double Dragon games. The Australian government has, ministers of defense, health, home affairs, finance, etc., similar to what the British government has, since obviously it's formed off of the same structure. They're the same parliamentary structure. But these shadow ministers are the opposition's counterparts to the ruling party's ministers. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So see, you come here for music, myths, and legends, and you stay for the lessons in Australian Parliament. So the band did a few reunion shows over the years before doing an official world tour in 2017, 15 years after Peter Garrett originally left the band. And the band has been around for their live shows over the years. Kurt Loder of MTV once said they were, quote, reputed to be Australia's most formidable live act. The Smashing Pumpkins' Billy Corgan, who is apparently now going by his full name, William Patrick Corgan, right, said they are, quote, one of the greatest live bands I've ever seen. And Jimmy Barnes, singer of another Aussie band I'll be mentioning later called Chisel, said, quote, they're one of the greatest bands ever and one of my favorite live bands in the world.
Nice.
And to kind of give a little bit of perspective on their influence across the world, so many bands have called them an influence. And one of my personal favorite punk bands, Hot Water Music, has stated that they're an influence on them. And after listening to Midnight Oil's, one of their early albums, Head Injuries, I can definitely see where that makes sense. Definitely I don't know if it's a direct punk influence necessarily, because that album I think came out in like 1979. So, punk was still kind of fresh, but maybe it might have just been, parallel construction as well, though. There's definitely a punk energy to some of that early music, although it's
absolutely,
yeah. I'd almost classify it as like a higher energy pub rock kind of vibe.
I think that nails it.
Yeah. Very long story short, though, they're a great band deserving of more recognition. I mentioned my editor was a big fan of them. He actually flew to go see them when they did that reunion tour. I can't remember where he flew to, but I believe it was somewhere on the West Coast, like San Francisco, San Diego, something like that. So he's a huge fan of them. And
did you get the story about Rob Hurst getting the standing ovation?
No, I did not.
Then not to cut you off, but
go for it.
You bastard, that was one of the bands I was going to do. So
seriously, damn it, my bad.
No, it's all good. Hey man, it's all part of good radio, man. But Rob Hurst, the drummer, he received a standing ovation. Let's see. Well, Rob Hurst played a 20-minute drum solo at the Stompin' Ground concert in 1997 when the power went out for all the electric instruments. Garrett walked off stage. Rob Hurst received a standing ovation after the power came back on, and the rest of the group resumed the song where they left off before the blackout.
Nice.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Tom Petty did that when I saw him in 2005. The power went out when it struck the pavilion, and I was watching him at I think it's called Klipsch Music Center now. It used to be called Verizon Music Center. Before that was called Deer Creek. It's right outside of Indianapolis. And it was pouring. Lightning struck the pavilion during Free Fallin'. The crowd kept singing as the power went out. And when the power came back on, the band picked right back up where the crowd was singing. So,
shut up. Oh, that's so cool.
Dude,
what band was it?
It was Tom Petty.
Oh, shut up. Oh, God.
Yeah, man. That was freaking sweet. That was awesome. It was a great show.
Jeez, is that all you got on that one?
So was there anything else you had about Midnight Oil?
Yeah, but it was really just more political things than anything else. You know, the one thing I was surprised about is I knew that he was involved in politics, but right. You know, being a stupid American, you know, I don't understand. Hell, I don't even understand our structure. You know, I understand on paper how it's supposed to work, but once you throw in all the corruption and, you know, payola and all that shit, right. You know, I don't know how it really works in real life. So if I don't even understand ours, you know, hell, maybe it would be easier to understand theirs. I don't know. But anyway, I had seen, there was a couple of things that I got that had been elected for or appointed or whatever. So really it was just, you know, more of the political stuff. Oh, I see. Well, I see one, in 1997, they set up furniture on a busy street in Sao Paulo, Brazil to protest air pollution in the city because Sao Paulo, I mean, it's like walking through mud.
Right.
And, they blocked traffic for over an hour.
Holy shit. That's some serious activism right there.
I think that outside of the political stuff, I think that's all I got on them. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Man, sorry to steal your thunder there. I specifically tried to choose bands that I didn't think you would talk about. So my bad on that one, dude.
I know where you live. So INXS. INXS is an Australian pub rock group from that they formed in 1977, which I had no idea that they were that old.
Yeah, me neither.
But they formed as the Ferris Brothers. They changed their name to INXS in 1980 and signed a record deal in Australia. In 1983, they got an American record contract, and on the very first album, it was "Listen Like Thieves." The label hated their album.
Oh, really?
You're going to love this. Yeah. So the band teamed back up with a legendary producer, Chris Thomas, to take their collective efforts a step further. Recording for a good portion of 1987, both in Australia and in France, the band felt they had built upon the possibilities opened up by the song What You Need, that was a friggin' monster. After the album was finished, longtime manager Chris Murphy took it to Atlantic Records president Doug Morris. Quote, he put his feet up on his desk and closed his eyes from the minute the record went on to the minute it finished, Murphy said. When it stopped, he said, I'll give you $1 million to go record another album. This is not happening. This is shit. Yeah, that's exactly. Which, you know, I've never worked in that part of the. I've never worked in that part of the music industry, but I'm almost positive that's not a good endorsement. So
that's like some
after that meeting
right there.
After that meeting in which he failed to persuade Morris how Need You Tonight, the song Need You Tonight, fit perfectly into the zeitgeist, Murphy received a call from worldwide president of Polygram, who, according to Murphy, asked, quote, what the fuck are Andrew and Michael doing? And just for good measure, the head of Warner Music Australia echoed those sentiments.
Oh, wow.
3 different record companies with no interrelationship are all telling the same thing, Murphy said. Wow. One positive response did come in, giving Murphy hope to press forward. I got a call from my producer manager in France, Murphy said. He wanted to tell me that the band were geniuses and that Never Tear Us Apart will be one of the biggest singles he's ever heard, and all the other tracks were brilliant. And he says, that gave me the spirit. The group became internationally famous by the start of the 90s. Hutchins gained reputation as a ladies' man with a flamboyant, arrogant, wild streak, and I didn't know that. I mean, I knew he was a good-looking dude, and, you know, he's got the long, curly hair, and, you know, a lot of women like that stuff, but, I mean, there's a lot of good-looking dudes in the music industry.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that, you know, but one thing that I didn't know was that he dated Kylie Minogue.
Oh, really? Who didn't?
Which
I think that was just a thing. If you were an Australian musician, you dated Kylie Minogue. It was like in your contract.
It was like a rite of passage.
I'm not insulting Kylie Minogue by any means, but it's just.
Oh, no. And that is one of the most classic asses you could ever see in your life. Holy God, that woman.
Oh, man.
two of the other ones he dated was Michelle Bennett and Paula Yates, which I'm not really familiar with them, but
me neither.
the way they were talking about them on the things that I was reading, apparently they're pretty influential in Australia. Huh. So Hutchins died on November 22nd in 1997 in Suite 524 at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Sydney. And it was ruled a suicide, but there was evidence that he was practicing autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I'll tell you this, that I remember at the time that happened, that he had, I want to say it was like a car accident, just like a year or two before then.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
okay.
He had lost either his sense of smell or his sense of taste, and I couldn't remember which one it was. I guess if you lose your sense of smell, you lose a lot of your sense of taste, right. So maybe that was what it was. But I heard that psychologically that was really messing with him, and that he had committed suicide because he just couldn't, handle that anymore. Which, I can understand why that would be, especially being a fat guy and my love for food. I can definitely feel that, but I can see how that could psychologically affect somebody. But you would think that something more important would be like sight or hearing or something like that.
I completely agree.
But so there was a rumor going around that he had killed himself because of that. And I didn't read that anywhere, but I remember that specifically whenever that happened. I was doing security then, and I never met anybody that, to my knowledge, I never met anybody that worked for them. Okay. So it's not like I had inside knowledge or anything. It's just, I remember them talking about, like Kurt Loder talking about that, different MTV and VH1 news things that they were talking about. But,
right.
It was at the time, and anybody that was alive during the time that Kennedy got shot, there's a lot of shit that's being put out on the radio and TV that wasn't necessarily true at the time, right. And people just kind of grasping at straws. It seems like more news places, more news resources, they would rather be first than correct.
Yes,
so
very true.
Maybe
very
that
true.
was what the case was. But
fake news.
Fake news. Oh God, I hate that guy. So if him and Kanye could just team up and run for president, but after losing. No, don't even get me started. After losing Michael Hutchins, INXS continued with various guest singers through the end of the 1990s, and in 2005, they found their new lead singer through their reality show, Rockstar INXS, which promised the gig to the winner. Do you remember that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do.
Oh shit, JD Fortune.
I just hate reality television, and so it just drives me nuts that they chose a singer from a reality show contest that just really rubbed me the wrong way.
Oh, I thought it was genius. Honestly, if I worked at a network, I would have thought of it. I thought it was genius. But JD Fortune got the prize and became their permanent singer. In 2009, JD Fortune told the Canadian version of Entertainment Tonight that the band let him go after completing their world tour, and that he was broke and homeless. He said, I didn't either. He said that he developed a cocaine addiction, while with the band because, it's a hell of a drug.
Goes to the territory.
And, the band would enjoy a little pre-show ping pong. As their 1993 tour writer reveals, they asked for a table set up before each show, which I thought that was kind of cool.
Interesting.
During their November 11th, 2012 performance as supporting act to Matchbox 20 at Perth Arena in Australia, INXS announced that it would be their last gig. Kirk Pengilly stated that it was appropriate to finish where they had started 35 years early. And Tim Ferriss caught, later on in 2015, Tim Ferriss caught his left hand, while operating a winch on his boat in Sydney and, severed his ring finger. So he underwent 2 extensive operations to reattach the digit, but it was left with permanent hand damage. And as a consequence, it's uncertain if he's ever going to be able to play guitar properly again. So,
man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. That really sucks.
Yeah, and for a musician, I mean, that's like a singer losing their voice box or something.
Right, exactly.
That's kind of tough. So that's what I got on that one. Go ahead, brother.
Man, yeah, that's brutal. I did not know a lot of that stuff, but then again, I'm not exactly what you'd call an INXS fan. So, fun fact though about them though, the last concert my parents ever went to in the 80s was a Men at Work and an INXS concert.
No. Oh, I bet that was a good concert.
My parents were huge Men at Work fans. They loved that band. So,
oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. Of course, I'm your parents' age, you know.
What's that?
Go ahead. I'm all done with that one.
Okay.
I said, yeah. Well, I'm your parents' age. I'm your parents' age, so I can appreciate that.
Oh no, man, Man at Work's a great
go ahead.
Band. Hell yeah. Okay, so the next band I've got here is a band called The Living End, which was a punk band. Yeah, great band. So Living End actually started their career in 1990 as a cover band called The Runaway Boys, which was taken from a track of the same name off the Stray Cats' 1981 self-titled debut album.
Yeah, baby.
And I know, right? And as such, they were a cover band playing songs by The Clash and, of course, the Stray Cats. Bassist Scott Owen was originally just a piano player, but was convinced by guitarist singer Chris Chaney to switch to an upright double bass instead. So the two began writing original material and actually changed their name to The Living End, a term used in the 1956 film Rock Around the Clock, as well as being a once fairly well-known term for doing anything to the extreme. And you know, they took that rockabilly influence and rockabilly and punk is really what the two strongest influence you're going to see in that band. They submitted a demo of their first song that they wrote, Headlines, to Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day, which landed them a supporting slot on the band's 1995 Australian headlining tour.
Huh.
Yeah, so the band's punk and psychobilly stylings found a wider American audience with the inclusion of their song Carry Me Home on the 2006 game Guitar Hero 2, which was a song from their 2000 album Roll On. And this was when I first heard of the band. I'd never heard of them before that. And it was definitely one of the harder songs to play on that game too. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, so despite remaining relatively unknown in the US outside of punk circles, of course, all 7 of their albums have actually cracked the top 10 in Australia. 2 have been number 1 and only 1 placed lower than number 4 at number 8. So, yeah, they remain. You know,
I'm wondering if his decisions to talk that guy into a stand-up bass had anything to do with Slim Jim Phantom, or the I don't know, the style of the rockabilly is more stand-up bass than. Oh, okay.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. That's definitely a staple of rockabilly and psychobilly. Like, if you don't have an upright bass, you're doing it wrong.
You shit. You shit.
So no, that's a great band that I do really enjoy. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Right on. So my next one is not necessarily a solely Australian band, but partially Australian band is ACDC.
Yeah.
And the Young Brothers and Bon Scott were all born in Scotland, but they formed the group in 1973 after moving to Australia. The band is I didn't know about this, but the band is popularly known as Akadaka in Australia, which is funny because whenever I was growing up, I used to call them Akdak, because, I was a smart ass. The current members of the band are Angus Young. All these guys, obviously he's from 1973 till now. Right. Malcolm Young obviously passed away recently. Right. But Phil Rudd from 75 to 83 took a break from 83 to 94, and he's there now. Cliff Williams from 77 till now, and then Brian Johnson from 1980 until now. Of course, he had that little break,
Right. Oh, so he is back singing for them again now?
Yeah. I think they officially announced it. Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize that. I somehow missed that. I didn't know that.
I don't know if they officially announced it, but I had heard it. Whenever I heard it, it was like on a music news thing. Okay. So I think it's at least semi-official.
Oh, cool. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So George Young, which is Angus and Malcolm's older brother, was in a popular Australian group called the Easy Beats, which I'm really hoping that you're going to cover that one.
No, I almost did.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
Yeah.
But he produced most of AC/DC's albums, and there have been 18 former members of AC/DC, and some of which include obviously Malcolm, and he just recently passed away. Phil Rudd, he was in and out, and now he's back in. But Phil Rudd is the only Australian-born member of the band. He was born in Melbourne. Due to ongoing legal problems in New Zealand, Rudd was unable to join the band for the 2015 Rocker Bus Tour and was replaced by Chris Slade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that either. Huh. I'd love to find out what the legal problems he had in New Zealand was.
Right. I'm curious about it too.
So, Bon Scott, born in Forfar, Scotland, hailing from Fremantle, Western Australia, died on February 19th, 1980, after a drinking binge the previous night. A friend named Alistair Kinnear took him home, but Scott passed out in the car. Kinnear couldn't move him, so he drove home, reclined the passenger seat, and covered Scott with a blanket. The next day, Kinnear found Scott motionless and drove to the hospital, where he was declared dead. The coroner's report stated the cause as acute alcohol poisoning and death by misadventure, which I think is an awesome way to die.
Right.
However I die, I'm telling you now, brother, however I die, you tell the coroner, put by death by misadventure. That's all I'm asking. So there's a gentleman by the name of Dave Evans. He's a Welsh-born Australian singer. He briefly sang for AC/DC from 73 to 74, and appearing in their debut single before being fired and replaced with Bon Scott.
Oh, I actually didn't realize that. I didn't realize they had a singer before Bon Scott.
Huh. Same here. Mark Evans is an Australian bass guitarist for the Australian rock band Rose Tattoo. Mm-hmm. Rose Tattoo apparently is like a big deal over there too.
Yeah. I saw them mentioned several times when I was looking up some different bands.
Yeah. And he was an early member of AC/DC from March 75 to June 77. His playing featured on their albums TNT, High Voltage, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, and Let There Be Rock, and 74 Jailbreak. Yeah. So he's no small member of the band, you know.
No.
Clifford Williams, everybody calls him Cliff Williams. He's a retired English musician who was a member of the Australian band, and their bassist and backing vocalist from 77 to 2016. He had started his professional music career in 67, which is crazy to think. Wow. That was 51 years ago. But he was previously in the British groups Home and Bandit, which I've never heard of either of them.
Me neither.
In 2016, Williams announced his retirement from the music industry after AC/DC's Rocker Bus World Tour.
I knew he'd been their bassist forever. I didn't realize he retired too.
Oh, just outright retired. It wasn't like he quit the band. He's like, meh, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Simon Wright, he's an English drummer, best known for his work with AC/DC and Dio.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's a hell of a resume right there.
And I recognize his name from playing with AC/DC, so I'm assuming he's who played with them while Paul Rudd quit in that 80s to early 90s.
I believe you're right. Yeah, I believe you're right. AC/DC has sold nearly 71 million albums in the U.S. alone, making AC/DC one of the 5 top-selling bands in American U.S. history. They've sold more than 200 million albums worldwide. That just blows my mind.
Right.
One of the group's best loved works was Back in Black, and it received a Recording Industry Association of America double diamond status for sales in excess of 22 million copies in the United States, 40 million worldwide, and is America's 6th largest selling album ever. Is that crazy?
Man. I knew it sold a lot, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me that it's over 20 million in just the U.S. alone. I think probably half of America. Well, it's obviously not half of America owns it, but it sure seems like it. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's so yeah. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it.
Yeah. This is just a little. This is a little thing that I don't know, got a bug up my ass, and I wanted to see who was above them. But they're the 6th best-selling album, and they're only topped by Billy Joel's Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2 at 23 million, Pink Floyd, The Wall at 23 million. Led Zeppelin 4 at 23 million. Michael Jackson Thriller at 29 million. And the best-selling album in the U.S. ever has been Eagles' Greatest Hits 71 to 75 at almost 30 million copies.
So really, there's only 3 albums of original, or 3 like actual albums ahead of them. 2 of those are greatest hits. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In 76, a 76 review, this is so damn funny, a 76 review of AC/DC's first album, and Rolling Stone declared, quote, hard rock has unquestionably hit an all-time low.
Jeez, really? And that first album that was released in the U.S., High Voltage, that's an amazing album. Rolling Stone can kiss my ass. Well, they can kiss my ass for numerous reasons, but
that not the smallest. But they finally appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone in 2008, which I think is hilarious.
Oh, wow. It took over 30 years for them to show up on the cover.
Ain't that some shit?
Holy shit.
They have an unlikely fan. I think I sent this to you, but they have an unlikely fan in Celine Dion who covered You Shook Me All Night Long, which was very similar. Yeah, which I thought was really similar to watching your parents sing the song at a karaoke bar.
Oh, man. I think when you sent that to me, I responded with the gif of Professor Farnsworth from Futurama saying, I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I felt, too. And I tell you, man, I love me some Celine Dion, like before she turned into Elvis. I thought she was really cute, and whenever she was just a mild-mannered singer from Canada, I thought she was really cute, but then she turned into Elvis, and I was like, okay, I'm all done. Yeah, no more.
Yeah. She can sing, but man, her music is just so... The best word that comes to mind is pompous.
Yeah,
pompous is the best word I can use to describe her.
That's a really good way to describe it. So, Angus Young used to wear school uniforms on stage, as well as Spider-Man, Zorro, and gorilla costumes. That's hilarious.
I've never seen any of those other ones. That's funny.
I haven't either. In 2004, AC/DC ranked number 72 on the Rolling Stone list of 100 greatest artists of all time. Despite tons of memorable hits, AC/DC has yet to release a greatest hits type album. But
they've had if you're looking for that's it.
Right. But if you're looking for an officially released compilation of their hits throughout the years, you could do a lot worse than to pick Who Made Who, effectively the band's soundtrack to Maximum Overdrive, or their Iron Man 2 soundtrack, which compiled tracks from all the eras of the band's existence.
That's true, too. I forgot about that one. Good point.
Yeah. And that's what I got on them.
Alrighty, so got another kind of this band is a little bit less obscure in the U.S. than the last one I just mentioned. This band is called the Distillers. They were a punk act formed in L.A. actually by Australian singer and guitarist Brody Dahl. Now, using the term punk here may be a bit controversial among some people I know. For instance, when I was at Punk Rock Karaoke up in India a couple weeks ago, one of the guitarists from the band that was playing mentioned that he hates this band. And the band's always been plagued by accusations of not being, quote, punk enough, and I attribute this to a few things. One is that Brody was married to punk legend Tim Armstrong, and I think some people kind of see her as riding his coattails to fame. But I disagree with that, just because she was already playing in a punk band called Sourpuss when she met him when she was 16. So I kind of call bullshit on that one. If anything, she might have just kind of fangirled out, but I don't see her as a coattail rider for some other reasons that I'll get to later. The second reason is they got signed to a major label fairly quickly, which is, as most of us know, career suicide in punk. Right. And the third possibility is just outright sexism, which I'm not one to call that too often. And I definitely think that those first two reasons I gave are the more common reasons for the hatred of the band. But there are definitely some people I've seen talking shit about them where I think that's probably the case. Like, just they don't like a female-fronted punk band.
Right.
Sadly, though, the band is probably best remembered for Brody's personal life around the time of their major label debut, 2003's Coral Fang, because around this time she filed for divorce from Operation Ivy / Rancid frontman Tim Armstrong and began dating Queens of the Stone Age's Josh Homme.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, and this led to a crazy backlash against both of them. Josh began receiving death threats, not just from Op Ivy and Rancid fans, but from Tim Armstrong himself.
Oh, wow.
Josh responded in the most Josh way possible. Quote, I got all kinds of threats. They were saying, we're going to kill you. And I'm saying, I'm 6'5" and I have red hair and I'm not hiding. Go ahead. I didn't steal anybody's anything, but not saying anything became the only thing that had any truth to it. There was Tim saying anything he could say, and pretty much now it's established that fake English accent singing fucking copycat motherfucker is full of shit.
Oh shit.
Don't be mad, just be gone.
Oh shit. That happened.
So, yeah, man. So in January of this year, a new Instagram and Twitter account for the Distillers was started to announce an impending reunion, and they will play their first show in 13 years later this May at Atlanta's Shaky Knees Festival.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so and they're a band. I enjoyed some of their stuff. I'm not a huge fan by any means, but it's not bad music,
right?
And I thought that there were more Australian members in the band besides just Brody, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah, that's all I got about that one.
So I have my next one as Cold Chisel, and I'm ashamed to say that I never heard of this band before we started doing the last episode. Whenever we were talking about Australian Crawl. And by the way,
I actually talk about them later too, so I'll pull up my info about them and contribute what.
Right on, cool. So Cold Chisel is an Australian rock band that formed in Adelaide, Australia. They had chart success in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and again more recently reforming in 2011 with their songs and musicianship exemplifying pub rock, which apparently is like a big genre there, and I dig that.
Yeah.
I don't think we have that here.
It's a big genre there and in England, both. And for people who aren't familiar with it, like it's kind of just a form of simple, loud, and usually at least somewhat aggressive rock music. Most commonly draws influence from blues, but also hard rock, soul, rockabilly, and occasionally even stuff like doo-wop, boogie woogie, or punk. Although granted, as I kind of touched on with Midnight Oils, the punk vibe is usually more of a parallel construction thing than an actual influence,
Right.
Like with ACDC, we talked about them. They came up playing in Australian pubs, and their earliest albums, especially High Voltage, often found themselves in punk bins in record stores. Yeah.
Well, one thing that I noticed with the pub rock is that it highlights the working class, mainly in their home country. And I think if there's really any kind of genre that is, really Australian, like if you had to pick a genre that's really Australian, like in America, it's really easy to say that like country is like ours and like blues is probably ours too.
Yeah,
for the most part, pub rock is definitely theirs, and
undoubtedly.
I dig it. I tell you what, man, doing research on this, I came out some individual acts and bands that, hell, I was listening to a dude that I wish I could remember his name, but I'm sure it was parallel thinking, but it reminded me a lot of Dylan.
Oh, and, gotcha. Yeah.
He was a little bit more country than Dylan, but that
Billy
sound,
Bragg,
that vibe. He's kind of older guy.
Yeah. Billy Bragg's been around for
their version. That might have been it. Yeah, I was really impressed with him.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
I ended up downloading like a half a dozen songs already from iTunes because I just dug it.
Yeah, and like Elvis Costello came from that scene too, from the pub rock scene as well. So,
no shit.
Although I think he's English, if I'm not mistaken, but similar thing.
Originally named Orange, the band formed in Adelaide in 1973 as a heavy metal cover band comprising keyboards of Ted Bernicki, bassist Les, I know I'm going to screw up these names and I'm terribly sorry, but Les Kesmerick, keyboard player Don Walker, guitarist Ian Moss, and drummer Stephen Prestwich. The 17-year-old singer Jimmy Barnes joined in December 1973, taking leave from the band in 1975 for a brief stint as Bon Scott's replacement in Fraternity.
Really? I didn't see that anywhere. That's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah. I didn't either. Gosh, I think I learned more on this thing than, and of course, I learn it and then we do the episode and then like 2 or 3 episodes later, I learn it again. So it's all just fun, So that's what I got on them. Go ahead,
nice.
brother.
Oh, well, no, that's cool. You covered a lot of the stuff I was going to start off with there, like the heavy metal band. Cover band was kind of interesting. They were playing songs by like Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, etc. Before kind of switching to that more pub rock influence. And Jimmy Barnes was originally going to leave the band in 1976, but what was intended to be his farewell show in Sydney that year went so well that he decided to stay with the group. And the next month, the band was signed to Warner.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, and so this band, they courted controversy consistently, which kind of just hearing about some of their escapades and whatnot reminded me a lot of ACDC. And their self-titled debut featured a single that was deemed too offensive for radio for the lyric, "Their legs were often open, but their minds were always closed."
Oh shit.
Yeah, they followed their debut album with a live EP titled "You're 13, You're Beautiful, and You're Mine," simultaneously parodying the song "You're 16" and Jerry Lee Lewis's marriage to his then 13-year-old cousin.
Wow.
Which Jimmy Barnes specifically said that part of it. Obviously the song, which has been, I think the Sherman Brothers originally wrote it and Ringo Starr covered it in 73. There was another cover of it in between there too. Jimmy Barnes was rumored to down a 5th of vodka before every performance, as well as having slept with
rock and roll.
I know, right? As well as having slept with over 1,000 women.
Geez.
Yeah. Their 1979 single "Choir Girl" dealt with a young girl having an abortion, which obviously went over like a lead balloon at that time. And this was my favorite thing about the band as I was researching them. In April of 1981, the band was nominated for all 7 of the major awards at a music awards show jointly held by Countdown, which was like American Bandstand or other similar top 40 youth-oriented music programs, and TV Week, which is like a cross between TV Guide and a tabloid. Okay. They protested the idea of a TV magazine hosting a music show, seeing it as antithetical to artistic integrity, which I agree with, and this made me instantly love the band, by the way. And so to protest, they refused to accept their awards. But they still came to the show, and at the end of the show, they closed it by performing their song "My Turn to Cry." They played 1 verse and chorus before smashing the set.
What?
Yeah, man. Their next album then, an album called "Swing Shift," debuted at number 1.
Wow.
So definitely simultaneously stuck it to the man and created a name for themselves. So I was pretty impressed by that. I was like, hell yeah, man. Just because, it kind of goes like with what I was saying about the reality show contest, music contest, man. I just hate that for that reason, because it becomes a popularity contest instead of musical integrity and artistic integrity. That's I understand why people enjoy them. I do, and I guess in the past I've probably been way too harsh and just outright saying stuff like "fuck American Idol," and whatnot. But that's where I come from. Just artistic integrity is paramount
everything
to me with music. Yeah, and so I understand that. But so the band is also notable for, among many other things, as we've seen, for the fact that they are the only Australian band to have hit songs written by every member of the group.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, the term hit here is slightly ambiguous, of course, and it's eclipsed by the fact that Queen had number 1 songs written by every member of their band, as you've talked about before in a previous episode. But it's still impressive, nonetheless, you know what I mean, to have that talented of a group of writers just who happen to be in the same band together. So, yeah, man. Good talk.
What's the next one you got?
Crowded House.
You son of a bitch. Oh my God. That was my very next one. All right, you go ahead and I'll kick in after.
We both did? Yeah. That's hilarious. Well, I don't have a whole lot about this one, so you're probably going to be able to do you just contribute a lot more to this one. But so Crowded House is a pop rock act best known for their 1987 hits Don't Dream It's Over and Something So Strong, written by vocalist, guitarist, and primary songwriter Neil Finn. And man, both of those songs are just really solid pop rock staples.
Absolutely.
I've heard those a million times on the radio and in retail. Jesus Christ, I heard Don't Dream It's Over a million times. But, you know, it's a solid song, so I never really got tired of it. And this band is also, they can be described by one of my favorite subgenre tags, jangle pop.
Nice.
Which is, you know, characterized by mostly clean guitars with a bright and chiming tone. And, you know, not to get too technical, but the guitarists often incorporate a lot of open ringing notes into their chords and riffs and whatnot. So, thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. The band broke up in 1996, but reconvened 10 years later following the suicide of their drummer Paul Hester, who had played with Finn in their previous band, the unfortunately named Split Enz, E-N-Z. God, that name is just the worst. I'm going to be honest, though, besides those two songs I named, I know very little about this band. Other than the name Neil Finn, I recognized it. I've heard his name several times before. But other than those two songs, that was like really pretty much all I know about them. But as I'm researching them, I found that apparently they've just been crazy successful in Australia. 4 of their 6 albums have reached #1 and the other 2 still hit #2. So, I mean, they've never had an album go lower than #2. That's pretty crazy. And 2 of those #1s came in 2007 and 2010. Which means they've performed well in 4 separate decades, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. And also another thing of note I found was that Ed O'Brien of Radiohead called Neil Finn pop music's, quote, most prolific writer of great songs.
Wow.
Which I thought was a pretty cool endorsement there.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure you have much more info than what I've got about that band, so please feel free to jump in with whatever you got.
Well, not a whole lot. You know, some of the things that I was really impressed with was that... let's see, New Zealand, beginning self-titled album, blah, blah, blah. They got, more international success, in the UK, Europe, and South Africa with their 3rd and 4th albums, Woodface and Together Alone. It's a compilation album, and the compilation album Recurring Dream. In Australia, the group has won an Australian Recording Industry Association award. They won 11 from 26 nominations, and they won 8 APRA awards with 11 nominations. Don't Dream It's Over was named the 7th best Australian song of all time in 2001, and it's still the 7th best song.
Oh, cool. It's interesting because that's the same group that made or that voted Beds Are Burning as the #3 best Australian song. That's interesting. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. In 87, Crowded House won the American MTV Music Award for the Best New Artist for their song Don't Dream It's Over, which was also nominated for 3 other awards. And in 94, the group was named International Group of the Year at the Brit Awards. And the last one I got in 2009, Don't Dream It's Over, was ranked number 50 on the Triple J Hottest 100 of all time, voted by the Australian public. And one thing I was going to do is I was going to research what Triple J is.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, actually, a little bit.
Oh, then by all means describe that, because okay, my American ignorance was kicking in.
I say I'm familiar with it. I'm only familiar with it for one reason, and that's one of my favorite bands, Hot Snakes. They did an album that's sort of a greatest hits, sort of. It was a live album that they did on Australian radio station Triple J. And that was their last release.
Oh, okay.
That was the last release that they put out before they broke up. And actually, they've got a new album coming out next month that I just pre-ordered this week, which I'm incredibly excited about. I'm stupid excited about that. And I'm going to go see them in St. Louis the 2 days before the new album comes out as well. So
sweet.
Very excited. But that's the only reason why I'm familiar with that is just because on the cover of that album, Thunder Down Under, as it's called, it shows the continent of Australia with 3 J's in it, just to symbolize that's where it came from.
So the next one I have is the Bee Gees. The The Bee Gees were a pop music group formed in 1958, which blows my mind. I can't even believe that they started back then.
Yeah.
But their
right.
lineup,
I knew they started a long time before they got popular and way before disco. But, that's
their lineup consisted of brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb. The trio was successful for most of the decades of their music recording life, but they had two distinct periods of exceptional success as a popular music act in the late 60s and the early 70s as prominent performers of the disco music era from mid to late 70s. The group sang recognizable three-part tight harmonies. Robin's clear vibrato, lead vocals were a hallmark of their earlier hits, while Barry's R&B falsetto became one of the signature sounds during the mid to late 70s and 80s. The Bee Gees, and I know the falsetto is like a real thing. I get that. I respect the fact that that's something that's a big deal and it's legitimate, and I don't. I appreciate it. I just I get it. I just don't appreciate it. Like, it just annoys the hell out of me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you've seen me sing then. Jeez.
Yeah, but the Bee Gees wrote all of their own hits, as well as writing and producing several major hits for other artists. Born on the Isle of Man to English parents, the Gibb brothers lived in Chorlton, Manchester, England until the late 50s. There in 1955, they performed as the Rattlesnakes. The family then moved to Redcliffe in Queensland, Australia, and then to Crib Island. After achieving their first chart success in Australia as the Bee Gees with an album called Spicks and Specks. I have no idea of the story behind that one. But
wow, yeah, that would not go over now. Obviously, I'm sure that was a very innocent title, clearly, but oh man.
That was so not fly in America. Oh yeah.
Oh no.
So they returned to the UK in January 1967 when the producer Robert Stigwood began promoting them to a worldwide audience. As of July 2013, the Bee Gees have sold more than 220 million records worldwide, placing them among the world's best-selling music artists of all time. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997. The presenter of the award to Britain's first family of harmony was Brian Wilson, historic leader of the Beach Boys, another family act featuring three harmonizing brothers.
Yep. Nice. I did not know that. That's interesting.
So they're not really Australian, but they, I can see how somebody would legitimately claim to them.
Right.
They're more English born, but they spent a large amount of their time in Queensland, and I consider them Australian artists for that reason, at least partially.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. Well, that's all the time we've got for this week, but we've got plenty more bands to talk about. We'll be back next week with part 2. Anytime you have a music myth or legend you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, you can reach out to us on social media. Find us on Facebook at Tall Tales and Music Mythology, on Twitter at T2M2 Podcast, or you can email us at hosts, HOSTS, at T2M2.org.
Or if you want to know more about the Smarts Project and what we can do for your high school music programs, join us at our home on the web at thesmartsproject.com. And our complaint department is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at Randy at thesmartsproject.com. Now more than ever, be kind to each other. Tell your kids you love them while you got them. And whatever you do in life, never be a myth.
Always be a legend.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, John here. If you'd like to hear me rant about other topics besides just music, check out the Gluff Nation podcast, where my brother and I tackle topics from politics, pop culture, and tech trends. Find us on YouTube, and we'll be bringing our rambling diatribes to iTunes and everywhere else podcasts are available soon. Thanks for listening.